Crime Cafe, your podcasting source of great crime, suspense, and thriller writing. I'm your host, Debbi Mack. Before I bring on my guest, I'll just remind you that the Crime Cafe has 2 ebooks for sale, the 9-book box set and the short story anthology. You can find the buy links for both on my website, debbimack.com, under the Crime Cafe link. You can also get a free copy of either book if you become a Patreon supporter. You'll get that and much more if you support the podcast on Patreon, along with our eternal gratitude for doing so. But first, let me put in a good word for Blueberry Podcasting. I'm a Blueberry affiliate, but that's not the only reason I'm telling you this. I've been using Blueberry Podcasting as my hosting service for my podcast for years, and it's one of the best decisions I ever made. They give great customer service. You're in complete control of your own podcast. You can run it from your own website, and it just takes a lot of the work out of podcasting for me. I find for that reason that it's a company that I can get behind 100% and say, you should try this. Try Blueberry. It doesn't require a long-term contract, and it's just a great company, period. And it also has free technical support by email, video, and phone. So you can get a human being there. Isn't that nice? Hi, everyone. My guest today has what most people would consider to be a pretty interesting resume. He began his career as a journalist writing about zombies, killer bees, talking apes, and other subjects for Rolling Stone, Spy, The New Yorker, Harper's, Esquire, and many other magazines. He has written 2 nonfiction books, The Day After World War III and Small Fortunes, then moved into writing for television drama, including more than 50 episodes of the original Law and Order, Blue Bloods, and Law and Order SVU. I have that right, don't I? SVU?
That's correct. Yeah.
All right. It's my pleasure to introduce my guest, Ed Zuckerman. Hi, Ed. Good to see you here.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's my pleasure, believe me. And wow, I mean, your guest post just tells an amazing story. And it
Oh,
struck me that you found the information initially in a book where a lot of people would have just stopped and said, "Oh, I got a book about Nigerian police. That'll do." But you took it farther. You talked to the author and then you went to Nigeria.
that's right. That's right. I was a journalist, but the first part of I've always been a writer, but my first part of my career was a journalist and did a lot of research and enjoyed the travel and enjoyed the research. And
Hmm.
when I came up with the idea for my novel, Wealth Management, one of the characters is a detective from Nigeria who shows up in Switzerland to investigate a crime. Geneva, Switzerland is where the story is set. And instead of just making stuff up about Nigerian police, especially nowadays with concern about being authentic and not, making, uh, who you're writing for, who you're writing about, I thought I would find and meet some Nigerian policemen, which was easier said than done. I can retell the story, or it's in the blog post that I put on your website. So what do you?
I will direct people to the website. I think they
Okay.
should read it because really it's a remarkable story to read.
And yeah, the short version, ended up going to Nigeria, which is we're a tough town. People don't go to Nigeria. Uh, Nigerians don't need you, and they expect the same. Tourists are not especially welcome, and you have to be all careful watching your step over there.
Interesting, very interesting. And the police are not always cooperative.
They didn't see any reason to cooperate with me, but I did arrange some contacts, as I describe in my the blog post that you can read on the Crime Cafe website.
I will be sure and put a link into the notes with this episode for sure.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and they're giving away a copy of the book as I understand it.
Yes, I am. I have a few left.
Awesome. Excellent. Because I gotta tell you, I'm reading it now and it's very, very compulsive reading.
Oh, I'm glad
Short
you feel that way.
chapters, well written.
Well, I did write for TV for a long time, and for better or
Uh-huh.
worse, the book is structured a little bit like a TV script with short chapters and a lot of dialogue and a good story, I hope, but also a substantial dose of humor.
I've noticed that since I've taken up screenwriting, my writing has gotten shorter.
Okay.
I mean, it happens, I think it happens when you go into screenwriting mode. You start being aware of how many words you're using to say something.
Right. You just don't. I mean, there's some famous writer, I forget who it was, uh, about something he had written. He said, if I had more time, I could have written less.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Choosing your words carefully is very important. I have to ask, you did such a interesting variety of topics in magazines
Oh,
in
yeah.
your work. How did you break into writing things like this for magazines?
I felt like I was born writing. I was a little kid. I was writing little stories and poems when I was 8 years old. In college, I was very involved with the school newspaper. It's really all I did in college was work which was a daily newspaper. That led to some newspaper work, some freelance work, and uh, I'm dating myself. But in the 1980s, being a freelance magazine writer was a good thing to be. That's when magazines existed.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays, it was pre-internet, and I moved to New York, and it was a great feeling. And once you had done one good article somewhere, it would lead to another article. You'd follow an editor from one place to another, and it just kind of grew organically. But
Hmm.
nowadays, with the, it's just that whole business has totally changed.
It
But it gave me a great
definitely.
chance. I mean, our magazines would send me all over the world to do articles, and it was great for a young person, which I was then.
Well, that's really great. That's fantastic. What was it that inspired you to write wealth management?
Well, actually, I'd been writing for TV for a long time at that point, and I'd done well over 100 crime stories from Law and Order and other shows. So my mind was in that realm. And I think the germ of it was after 9/11, which is a terrible event, needless to say. There was a report that somebody had shorted airline stocks right before. And as you probably know or may know, if you short a stock, you make money if the stock price goes down. And of course, airline stocks went down drastically for a while after 9/11 because no one was flying. And it was actually investigated whether or not Osama bin Laden or people in league with him had decided to make money off that attack by shorting airline stocks. And it was investigated by the FBI and the SEC. And it turned out it was a total coincidence. I mean, on any given day, someone is shorting every stock in the world, probably. And so someone had shorted the stocks and made a lot of money from the tragedy, but it was like some investor from Nebraska or something. So it was totally
Mm-hmm.
innocent. But it occurred to me a few years later that after the Islamic State withdrew from its so-called caliphate in Iraq, when it had a lot of territory for a while, when it withdrew from Mosul, which is their capital, big city in Iraq, there was a bank there, and they looted the vault of hundreds of millions of dollars in cash as they retreated. They also had a lot of money for terrorizing their own population back when they had controlled territory. They even had Islamic State traffic police who were fining drivers for driving with broken taillights. So they were in retreat, but they had a lot of money. So, and they may have been stupid or not stupid. They may have been evil and or crazy. But if they weren't dumb, what would they do with all this money? Maybe they could start investing it. And what if they began investing it, shorting stocks in companies that they were going to blow up soon thereafter? So that was part of the basis of the idea. And then I devised the characters and the situation and the love triangle and the drama and the tension and the humor, whatever else I managed to cram in there.
Right. Well, it does read a little like a television show then. It doesn't.
Well, I hope it reads
That's
like a good
good.
television show, but a
That's a
good
good
television
thing.
show, I hope.
These days, television shows can be really addicting. They're so well written.
Well, nowadays it's sort of a golden age of television. Again, every 10 years is a new golden age. But
Really.
and also I kept it short and moving quickly because I get bored with scenery in novels.
Me
I don't really
too.
care what the weather is like.
God, me
Some
too.
people go on and on. Some writers who go on and on about what the beautiful mountain across the way, and I said, get to the point. Tell me a story, and let's move this along. And that's what I like to read. And so I wrote the way I like to read.
Awesome. That's music to my ears, really. How long did it take you to write the novel?
Longer than I thought. I thought, I thought, oh my God, I've written hundreds or more than 100 TV scripts and in a week or two. Uh, but it was harder than I thought. It took longer than I thought. Probably a couple of years, including the research and the travel.
Mm-hmm.
And in a TV script, if you're writing a scene about, Debbie and Ed having a conversation in a restaurant, you write interior restaurant night. Debbie and Ed are sitting at a table, and then it's just dialogue. In a
Mm-hmm.
novel, you have to talk to,
Create the
what
scene.
they're thinking, what it looks like, what's going on. You can't just do that. So, I mean, I once knew a writer. He's since deceased, a best-selling writer, Stuart Woods, and when I met him, he was writing two books a year, and they were all bestsellers. You probably know of Stuart Woods. He's
I've heard the
uh,
name.
and I was having drinks with him one night, and he said, Ed, my agent said, if you're writing two books a year, Stuart, they're all bestsellers. Could you write three books a year? And he said, yeah, sure, why not? I'm not I'm not a fast writer. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Some people can do that. I can't.
no, nor can I.
Yeah. How much research, how many hours of research do you think went into that novel?
Oh, I mean hundreds. I mean just flying to Nigeria alone. And
Right.
because the book is about money laundering and dirty money and Wall Street and how investment banks work and how wealth managers work. And I've never worked in finance, but I had some friends who knew people on Wall Street, and they introduced me, and I would interview them. It was like I approached my novel writing with using my background as a journalist as well as a TV writer. So I learned a lot about money laundering and terrorist financing, and there's voluminous reports by these international organizations. And I mean, it can be really boring after a while, but you learn to cherry pick the best examples. So. And
Yeah,
the research was the easy part. Then I had to like, oh, I'm not going to make a novel out of all this stuff.
exactly. Right. Exactly. Harder than it sounds. Um, what kind of writing schedule do you keep?
Really awful one. I just, I read about these people who get up at 4 a.m., write for 3 hours before the kids go to school or something. Now I get up, I have to check my email for a while, I read the papers, have breakfast, then it's maybe time for lunch, and so, um, I usually have a quota, a very modest quota per day, and I don't usually get till mid or late afternoon. And if I write a few good pages, great, I'm done. Which is why I don't write one book every 4 months. It's why I write one novel every 65 years.
So your next one won't be out for a while then.
It's going to be a while. It's I actually I was going to set a sequel with some of the same characters in St. Petersburg, Russia, where my daughter was living, weirdly enough.
Huh.
I mean, whose kids go to, move to Russia when they finish college? Um, but then COVID happened and Russia was shut down and then war with Ukraine. And so I've actually been doing research in Helsinki for another book. Helsinki is very close to St. Petersburg, you may know, and it's now it's on the front line of what's happening in Europe, and they joined NATO. And so anyway, stand by. I'll be back on your show in 5 years from now.
Cool. Hopefully I'll be around doing it.
Save me a slot. I'm sure you will.
Absolutely. It's a date. Have you ever read The Helsinki Affair? There's a book out there called The Helsinki Affair.
I haven't seen that one. I've read some books by Helsinki crime writers, but not that one. Do you recommend it?
I do. Yeah, I enjoyed it.
I mean,
It's a
Helsinki is
spy novel.
a really interesting place. The history there is is fascinating. I went to a bar and sat at a table where Vladimir Lenin had sat,
Mm.
conspiring with Finnish communists in 1918. It was like, whoa, okay, I'll sit here.
Oh, wow. That's even cooler than sitting at the round table in New York in that hotel.
Yeah, the Algonquin Round Table. Yeah,
Algonquin, that's it.
yeah,
I
yeah,
did that
yeah.
one. Yeah, I was there once, saw the round table.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's still bullet holes in some of the bridges from the Finnish Civil War, and it was a very interesting place.
I'll bet. I'll bet that's interesting. So what are you working on now?
This week, I'm weirdly working on the narration for a documentary about the money from the cryptocurrency in the 2024 election.
Fascinating.
It just came out of nowhere. It's the friend of a friend said, "Hey, if you're doing anything, can you help us with this documentary?"
Wow.
So, and I'm also dealing with my a brand new grandson, so that's pretty exciting.
That's cool.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
thank you.
And you have a good documentary voice.
Oh well, they haven't asked me to be the narrator, but yeah, I've been told that, but I've never done it.
Well, good luck with that. That's excellent. Let's see. Oh yeah, I wanted to ask you, what's the secret for breaking into television writing?
Wow, that's really.
These days.
I broke in a long time ago, and I got in because I had a friend who was working in TV and thought maybe I could
Mm.
do it, and gave me a chance to come in a pitch an idea to Miami Vice.
Ooh.
And the people running Miami Vice at the time uh, hired me provisionally to write a script, which ended up being kind of a disaster. But that was my entry through a friend who was a very talented writer who thought I had the talent to do that. And it turned out I knew how to do it. I turned out I had an act for it, and then I lasted for a long time. But nowadays, getting in, it's all micromanaged by the studios and the networks. And hoping I don't get arrested for saying this, but they've been focusing on diversity lately. But maybe they're not now. That's illegal, so they're not focusing on diversity anymore. Uh,
Who
uh,
knows?
the thing about writing for TV is TV or movies sort of overlap now more than they used to. There are probably literally millions of people who would like to write for TV, and there are hundreds, maybe a few thousand people doing it. So it's
Hmm.
like it's and then the thing that's weird is that when I worked in TV, which I did for a long time, I was surrounded by some very talented writers and some very mediocre writers. So I thought, well, why did this person get in when there's so many people banging on the door? There's so many banging on those doors that the agents, who are basically the gatekeepers, can't. I mean, they get. I don't know. The short answer is people move to LA, they get jobs as assistants, getting coffee for writers, and and you get Harvard Law School graduates begging to be your assistant to get you coffee and do your Xerox thing. Because once you're in the writer's room as an assistant, taking the notes, you can move up. But those jobs are incredibly competitive. Those crummy jobs are incredibly competitive. So I don't know, buy a lottery ticket. Just
Really, you're probably better off.
and God only knows.
It's it's kind of things have gotten really wild as far as all this goes, in terms of like writing for television, writing for publication, all of it. The internet
Well,
has
now
just
everyone's
changed
a
so
writer.
much.
People are self-publishing. When my book came out, it got some nice attention. It got a few very strong reviews, but there's so many books out there.
Yes,
And my book is not a bestseller, but if anyone wants to buy it, it's available. Please do. Uh, I think you'll like it. Hope you'll like it. But it didn't to break through that the clutter. Yeah,
yeah,
I wrote nonfiction books early in my career as a journalist. And back when a book came out, the publisher would send you. I went on a nationwide book tour, and they took ads, and I was on Good Morning America, and I was on the David Letterman show talking. I was on the Today Show. And nowadays, your book comes out, and unless you're already a star, or
exactly.
lightning strikes a new writer, which happens sometimes. You get the right book that's good at the right time, and you get picked. Uh, but in most cases, they say, "Well, here's a copy of your book.
Hmm.
Good luck."
Good luck, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And you might get a little advance, which will get used up toward promotion or something.
I got a little bit. I mean, I did not want to self-publish. I mean,
Hmm.
I got a. I was with the real publisher. I got a small advance, and and I was one of the crowd that coming out.
That's
But I
it.
think self-publishing is. Some people do very well by it, and
And
I
I
just didn't.
can't,
Now
yeah.
how about you publish? Do you self-publish, or are you published by?
I have been self-published since 2009. Yeah, I I started it after I lost my, I was with a small press and they went under
Mhm.
9 months after I signed a contract with them. So
Oh, wow. Actually, I have a
after
friend.
trying to find an agent, I found, I said, oh, the heck
It's
with it.
I but I have a friend who's self-published. She used to be published by a New York publisher. He had a series. I won't tell his name. Well, I won't tell his name. So I'll give some detail. And eventually his series kind of dried up, and the publisher said, we're not. And he at one point he was spending a few years ago, maybe he'll still be doing it, $20,000 a month advertising on Amazon.
See, I would never do that.
So when you bought a new Amazon Kindle and took it out of the box, there's a
Mm-hmm.
book on the cover. So his book, his latest book, he writes a book every year, would be on the cover. So he told me he was spending $20,000 worth of advertising, but he was taking in $30,000 a month.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it was a business, and he was working. I mean, just to manage that, and God bless him, and it worked great for him. And
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
I find little events, and anyway,
when Amazon
I,
is, involved, that kind of thing happens.
yeah, yeah. And now AI, it's AI books are coming out, and
Oh,
what
it
a time.
it it's a mess out there as far as AI goes. I mean, there are good uses of AI and bad uses. That's
Mhm.
what it comes down to. And plenty of people are taking advantage of the bad uses, it seems.
Yeah.
Um, what writer most inspired you to become a writer?
Well, when I was a kid, I used to love the short stories of John Updike.
Mm-hmm.
Really wonderful prose. Uh, and Hemingway. I read some of the Hemingway when I was quite young. Um, so, and then I began reading the so-called new journalism writers like Tom Walsh, and that's actually more like what I ended up doing for magazines. Hunter Thompson, uh, writers that were lively and fun, and I just, I aspired to do that, and then in my own way, I did a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
That's
yeah,
excellent.
I think some people are born with musical talent, and some aren't. I'm not. And I think some people are born with sort of a facility with language. In the same way some people are born with a facility for music. It has to be developed. It has to creative writing courses in college and all that. Then I caught some lucky breaks. I mean, luck is so important. I mean, luck is that I knew this one guy who worked at T. I mean, it's just,
Exactly. Yeah. Sometimes it's just who you know and what you have
yes.
access to.
Mhm. Like, one to go to a good college. It's not necessarily what you're going to study there, but who you might meet there.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
I wish I'd known that when I went to college.
Well, I don't
I was
know.
a dumb kid. What can I say? For a smart person, I was pretty dumb.
I
Um,
think we all were when we were young.
I
Yeah, I think
suppose you're right.
plastic fences. But if I could go back, knowing then what I know now, I would have.
Done this,
Anyway,
that, and the other, of course, yeah. But
yeah,
you can't do that, and really everything that you do adds up to what you become. So really, everywhere you go, there you are.
that's
Something like
okay.
that.
That's true. And you are what you eat. Um,
Exactly. What advice would you give to anyone who'd like to have a career as a writer?
um, write and read a lot. Uh, I often found that if I was reading something, the next thing I wrote I'd be emulating that, kind of imitating what it was in my mind. And so read good stuff. Just read, and write for anyone you can write for. Any little magazine. I began writing for these weekly newspapers back a million years ago. One time I was getting $5 an article for religious news service. I was writing something for them.
Hmm.
Get Try to get published. Read, write, and try to get published. And so you have some good clips. Um, and get lucky. And try to
Hmm.
put yourself in places where you can, get lucky. People move to LA, they move to New York, they go to a creative writing program at a good college. They put themselves in. They go to these writers conferences, and I saw like these crime writers conference, Thriller Fest, and some of the others. have ways to meet agents, to network, to do those the 5 minute pitch sessions, and sitting alone in your room somewhere ain't gonna suffice it.
Yeah, I agree
And
completely.
you need talent and you need luck.
Perseverance too.
Yeah. Although there's a certain point when you wonder. I mean, I knew some people out in LA who wanted to be TV writers, and they were working as assistants, and they were, getting me coffee, and at a certain point, they were 32 years old, and I thought, maybe I should go to law school now. I mean, I don't know
Yeah.
what to cut your losses. That
Yeah.
might be,
It's a really tough field to make really a good living at. But you can do it if depending
it's well, I fell into
on
TV
things.
by chance, and TV, of course, was enabled me to gave me the financial resources to get a small advance and then fly to Nigeria.
Yeah, yeah. So that's good timing as well as talent.
A lot of things added up. Yeah, the
A
right way.
lot
I
of
was
things
lucky.
add up to, yeah. I mean, this is the thing. Everybody wants to know, how do you achieve this thing? And it's like everybody achieves it in a different way.
True.
It's kind of what it comes down to. And sounds like you had some
I knew
good
one guy in
resources.
LA. Everyone else was moving out there. He was a young guy, and trying to get jobs as assistants. And he said, "I'm not going to do that." He worked as a waiter, but he was a
Mm,
good writer, and somehow he ended up getting a script to the right person, and he's had a good career.
you just never know. You never know when
Yeah.
it's going to happen. Yeah, you have to keep trying. So, is there anything else you'd like to add before we finish up?
Uh, uh, I was going to talk about. No, I think we've covered things. Uh, lately, I've been reading a writer named Mick Herron. Do you know Mick Herron? He writes the Slow
Yes,
Horses
the
series,
slow horses. Yeah.
which is now on Apple TV, and it's a big
Hmm.
hit. His first few books were published and did nothing, and it was with the third or fourth book in the series, he suddenly broke, and then the previous ones became big, um, and he's a writer that I really admire because he tells great spy stories with humor, which I think is very important. And it's a kind of thing I would emulate. Oh, I'll tell you one other story. When you publish a book, you get these blurbs. You get people you know to say, "This is the best novel since Charles Dickens. This is the greatest writers." And you take this with a
Yes.
grain of salt. I notice Stephen King blurbs almost every novel that comes out. I mean, if you and, so I had people blurb my book, some writers I knew, and I was being compared to some really great writors like Elmore Leonard, my
And Le Carre.
embarrassment. Hmm?
And Le
I said,
Carre.
yeah, Lucara, yeah. So these are great comparisons, but I'm very, ashamed to have. So I was in Helsinki doing some research for my next novel, and I went to a sauna. They're crazy about saunas in Helsinki, in Finland. They don't go to saunas all the time. So I went to this very upscale sauna in a kind of a chic bar restaurant that had a sauna attached. And I'm sitting in the sauna in my bathing suit, sweating, and there's a young American couple next to me. And we start talking, and the woman says, "Oh, so what do you do?" So I say, "I'm a writer." She said, "Oh, my boyfriend's grandfather was a writer." So I'm thinking, like, nowadays every jerk on the bus is a writer. So I say, "Well, oh, well, that's nice. What was your grandfather's name?" And he says, "Elmore Leonard." So I say, "Oh my God, someone compared me to your grandfather on my book cover, and I'm so embarrassed."
Wow. Oh my gosh.
Well, you got a sauna in Helsinki, and you run into Elmer Leonard, the grandson, who's an artisanal baker in a suburb of Detroit. It turns out,
How interesting. That's
yeah.
fascinating.
Nothing to do with my book, but
Well, it's great. It's still a great story. That's awesome. You never know who you're going to run into out there. Well, I want to thank you for taking the time to talking with us and telling us all these great stories. Thank you.
nice to meet you. Thanks for having me.
It was wonderful to have you on. Thank you. And stick around. We'll have a bonus episode after this.
Very well.
Yeah, we do a bonus episode for the Patreon supporters. It's
Oh,
just like
good. Oh,
5 minutes, like 5 or 10 minutes.
great.
So, just want to let everybody know, if you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review. They help a lot. And for access to ad-free episodes, bonus episodes, and more, become a patron of the podcast on Patreon. Our next guest will be Deborah Greenberg. Until then, take it easy and happy reading. Be seeing you.